time for the second practice for the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series teams. Race number 7 in the chase for the NASCAR Sprint Cup. This Sunday, the AMP Energy 500. We're under an impound weekend, which means both practices will be today and then the qualify tomorrow. If you missed the first practice, fireworks just 7 minutes into the practice. Several cars involved. Sam Hornish, Clint Boyer, the 99 of Carl Edwards, all receiving some damage. As you take another look, you see Boyer spinning down onto the grass. Glad you're back with us here at Talladega on Halloween weekend, of course. We don't know who's responsible for scheduling a race at Talladega on Halloween weekend, but nonetheless, Steve Burns, Larry McReynolds, and Jeff Hammond. And Jeff, what is going to happen now? Because this is final practice. We talked about the impound weekend between first practice and second practice.
I'm hold my breath for another hour.
60
I'm
minutes.
Start holding my breath because, again, we talked about the 77 car. He had to go to a backup. A lot of work had to be done on that 33 car, Clint Boyers. That's what you don't want. You want to make sure you try to pick yourself out a spot, if it's at all possible, Larry McReynolds, to run this practice session, keep your car safe, learn from it, and as quick as you possibly can, put it up on 4 jack stands.
I think there's no question of the 44 cars that we have here. I think we will see maybe some cars not even run this practice session, like Juan Pablo Montoya in the 42 car, and we may see packs like this of maybe about 8 to 12 to 14 cars. I'm not sure we'll see packs of the 25 cars like we saw at that first practice. I think a lot of people decided they had what they had when they unloaded, and here's the 33 car that was involved in that wreck. They spent that whole rest of that practice and this last 45 minutes repairing this 33 car, so they just want to go out there and make sure everything's still good, because that's the very car that finished 4th in the Daytona 500 back in February.
Well, the beginning of that first practice was scary, no pun intended, on Halloween weekend. Cars 3 wide, 4 wide down the backstretch. But things eventually sorted out and settled down.
But the thing is right now, Steve, and Larry kind of pointed it out, you can take a quick look here. Look what's happening here. This is very mannerly. This is the kind of pack and kind of racing that you can learn from, but at the same time, you don't have to feel like you're going to wreck every moment, because 4 wide, 3 wide, it gets crazy when that's going on. I mean, that's the main thing is that you just want to keep your nose clean and learn something. And Larry Mack, it's that 42 car on what? 4 jack stands.
I would be willing to bet even the race day checklist is on the side, because this is an impound race weekend. When these guys push their car through inspection to go qualify tomorrow, that's the only laps they'll make tomorrow. NASCAR will impound the cars, and you pretty much will race what you qualified for 500 miles on Sunday.
Juan Pablo Montoya trying to hang on in the chase for the 2009 Sprint Cup. Jimmy Johnson, you see him in the 48 mid-pack, comes in here with a 118-point lead over his teammate Mark Martin.
You take a look, Larry, there's just some guys that are making, I guess you'd be getting ready to make some qualifying runs. You see Jeff Burton, Paul Menard on back through there. I think I see Joe Nemechek's car, Jamie McMurray. I believe all these guys are getting ready to make qualifying attempts, including the 82, Scott Speed. Several of these cars have got to make their way into the race. One car will go home. We've got 44 cars here this weekend. One car will go home.
Well, let me ask you guys this, because this is one track where you start truly doesn't have that big of a determining factor on where you finish. So what is the priority in qualifying? Pit selection?
Well, I want to qualify up front, because I go back to the spring race. We had a wreck break out on lap 7 about a third of the way through the pack. So yeah, pit selection, we know how important that is week in and week out, but I still, without sacrificing my race setup, especially if I'm a top 35 guy, I still want to qualify up near the front. I'm not sure there's any safe place on this racetrack, but I want to take my chances out front.
Jeff, there's a lot of strategies to run this race. I've seen guys hang out in the back all day and then make a late charge, but I don't know that you really, if there is a safe place to run here.
You're right, Steve. I mean, that's the problem that we run into as we watch now. They are doing three wide. Take a look here as far as the troubles that happened here in Talladega in April. Jimmy Johnson's only DNF came here when he got caught up in a crash on lap 180. Mark Martin, Larry mentioned lap 7, he got caught up in that along with his teammate Jeff Gordon. So this place has wreaked havoc on our chase contenders, so they all know what can happen when they come in here, and everybody's trying to figure out what kind of strategy does it take. Being up front, being in the back, you know, finding somebody to hang out there with and just try to keep my nose clean. you know, there is no certain thing that's going to pay off because Jimmy Johnson hung around at the back. So did Carl Edwards. And when the checkered flag dropped, both of those guys have been wrecked.
Wendy Venturini.
Well, we ended that last practice session wondering who was going to stay out there for this practice, who was going to stay in the garage area. Well, the 42, as we mentioned, decided not to go out this practice session. The 14 of Tony Stewart in the garage, and I think he should be done. He was going to make one run. But the 48 right there, you see him deep in that pack right in the middle of that draft. They did plan to go out in this practice session, try some more things. Right before this practice session started, you heard the spotter come over the radio and warn Jimmy Johnson, deliver the message from NASCAR, warning these drivers about the draft. NASCAR was going to be policing more of the drafting in this practice session. They didn't like everything they saw that happened in the first practice session. I know there was a little bit of conversation about what happens here at Talladega and the drafts in these practice sessions. Sometimes these guys are learning a lot about these race cars, but as we saw in the first practice session, Steve, the cars were fishtailing right up on each other, which caused a big domino effect in that first practice. Everybody's trying to take it a little more easy this practice session, especially when NASCAR gives their warning.
Well, I think what she's saying, Wendy, is that they don't want to see a lot of bump drafting. And they also don't want to see these guys pushing each other through the corner. That's when you really usually get yourself in trouble. And we know they have the ability. We've seen them do it. But you're running the risk of taking somebody out of contention as far as making this race or either having their primary car destroyed because you make unnecessary moves or radical moves, a little bit like we saw the 88 do right there. That's what they're looking for, is they do not want to see guys wreck cars unnecessarily.
Larry Mack, I almost fell down when Wendy was talking. Do you know why?
Why is that?
Because my foot was stuck in your fruit syrup.
Know where you're going with that one.
Speed's presentation of NASCAR Sprint Cup final practice from Talladega is brought to you by Quality Hotels. Rates and rooms to put you at ease. Book at qualityinn.com. Final practice underway here at Talladega. You see a pack of about 12 cars, and during the commercial we were listening to Jimmy Johnson's spotter Earl Barbin. Jimmy leading the pack. Let's see if we can hear Earl right now.
Inside, 3, 2 wide inside, 2 wide inside. Still 2 wide inside. 2 wide inside, 18 still with you. 2 wide inside. No help inside. Clear by 1. Working the top, quarter outside, looking.
Guys, what's interesting about listening to Earl Barbin, one of the things he's telling Jimmy Johnson is where the traffic is coming from.
And I'm going to tell you the thing he has to do, that he's doing a very good job
Outside
anticipating.
9 car only, NASCAR is the 9.
He knows when he sees 2 or 3 cars get lined up behind Jimmy that they're probably going to be coming at a very high rate of speed.
Still outside.
But to me,
9
and
car
I've
only.
spotted here for a truck race, what makes it tough is the backstretch is a long way away. A lot of these guys are spotting actually with binoculars, and what's really tough, they're right in the middle of the tri-oval. As the cars come off 4 coming to you, and as they go off into 1 going away from you, you almost can't tell. And sometimes you'll have to tell your driver, can't tell. Play it on the conservative side, especially in practice.
You need to let him every now and then know you need to look yourself. You can't be totally dependent upon me to make all of these calls. But guys, one thing about watching this practice session so far is how much slower this practice is than the other.
Back to the garage, Bob Dillner.
Well, down here in the garage, like you said, Steve, the 20 car up on jack stands, one of several teams that is sitting out this practice session. Joey Logano, our rookie in the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series, I know he would probably like to get a lot more practice, but whose call was it to sit out?
I was Zip's call. You know, he's been here a lot more times than me, and I felt like our first run out there was probably our best run, and we kept trying things, and it wasn't getting any better, so we kind of went back to what we were. And, as far as making qualifying runs, it's so windy out here. I feel like we can't have a consistent enough deal to feel like we made any gains or not. So for me, I always want to be in the race car, always want to drive, but they feel like the Home Depot Toyota is pretty good today.
Joey said this is his first practice session, possibly that he's ever sat out 5th quick in that first practice.
Well, the thing about it, Bob, he got a lot of practice back in the spring because he ran all 188 laps, 500 miles. Actually got his very first career top 10 finish here in the spring, finished 9th.
And we're getting word that NASCAR has warned some of these drivers to leave a little daylight in between bumpers.
I would say that came a lot from maybe the crew chiefs going over there and getting them to warn these guys.
Save my race car. I think we see what's getting ready to happen here as they come up to 99. Oh, tag you're it. Tag you're it again.
And you know, honestly, there's nothing wrong with what's going on right there. It's on the straightaway, but I think what John Darby and NASCAR is thinking, guys, it's practice. Let's don't have another couple of 3 cars getting torn up.
And we mentioned it in first practice. Don't forget, when you watch the race Sunday, the yellow line is out of bounds. You cannot advance your position below that yellow line.
Well, just think about it. The last 2 races here, that yellow line, you see it right there, the double yellow line. Mike Joy had a lot to do, I think, with those guys going with the double yellow line because the fan can relate to it. You're going down a highway and you see 2 yellow lines, you cannot pass. But if you think about the last 2 races here, that yellow line or double yellow line has played an outcome in the race. 1 year ago, Regan Smith went below it to go by Tony Stewart. There was a little bit of a controversy there. Was he forced or not? Bottom line is he advanced his position by going there. There's Regan Smith right there in the 78 car, and he was regulated to the last car on the lead lap. If you go spin ahead to the spring race, Brad Keselowski stayed on that line, didn't go below it, and held his line. Carl Edwards came down. Brad Keselowski did not move. And the end result was Brad Keselowski won the race. Carl Edwards went up into the catch fence.
Carl Edwards does not want to see a repeat of that here this Halloween weekend.
He didn't want to have to run across the finish line.
Look who's quickest. Clint Boyer's back.
Final practice continues here at the Talladega Superspeedway for the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series teams. And let's go back a few months. April 26th. The final lap, Brad Keselowski in that 09 car makes contact with Carl Edwards. Edwards upside down and into the fence. Another look. As Jeff said, Brad Keselowski held his line. Edwards runs into Ryan Newman and then the catch fence.
You know, as I said so many times, this was almost the perfect storm. You can see right here, Edwards gets up and he's coming back down. The car's going to sit back down when the roof flap's deployed, but that's when Ryan Newman in the 39 car came along and just sent him back up in the air again.
Sent him flying.
You know, we talk about a lot of the safety innovations, but I want to give Rick Humphrey, the president of this racetrack, a lot of credit. After that race, that catch fence that you see over top the track was raised from 14 feet to 22 feet.
And another thing is, Steve, you'll notice that even the very top, higher, kind of like up out of the fans' vision, they've changed the mesh of the fence to try to catch more parts if they get up into that high. Done a lot of work there. NASCAR did their part by going smaller restrictor plates. The track did their part by raising the fence, all in an effort to protect
Look
our
at that shot right there, Jeff. If you notice, I think what you see there is totally by design. I think that is to add protection to our flagman that's in that flag stand right there, because let me tell you, that guy is pretty vulnerable. I think the way it droops out like that is more protection for the flagman.
And a young lady, a high school student from Alabama, was hit by a piece of sheet metal from Carl Edwards' car, and she missed her, had her jaw wired shut. And I read Carl Edwards has talked to her recently, and she may be here this weekend.
Yeah, they were going to visit.
Yep.
That was her first visit to Talladega Superspeedway. Now, Jeff talked about this at the top of the show. Sam Hornish Jr. had a great qualifying run back in the spring, qualified 4th. This is a backup car because they could not repair that car. But talking about the catch fence and the flagman, remember when this kind of all started? And actually, what led to the carburetor restrictor plate is in the spring race of 1987, the entire field qualified over 200 miles an hour. And right about lap 15 to 20, Bobby Allison, the engine actually blew up on that car and the harmonic balancer came off. Bobby ran over it, cut the tire down, and got in the fence and almost went into the flag stand. And I still can remember Harold Kinder, who was the flagman, grabbing that flag and waving that yellow flag, and parts and pieces were flying everywhere around him.
And there had been other restrictor plate races for different reasons, but again, that was NASCAR's effort to slow the cars down and provide safer racing for the competitors, and of course, first and foremost, the fans. Take a look at our quality in track description. 2.66 miles around. In case you missed it, there was a Dave Despain on assignment show. I think it airs again maybe later today. about how Bill France Sr. built this track, and it opened in 1969, and it's fascinating. Bill France Sr. actually went into personal debt to build this racetrack, and there was a drivers union trying to form in the midst of their first race. It was just fascinating. So if you missed it, make sure you catch it.
Yeah, Dave done an excellent job right there with that show.
And you know, the one thing that I said about that particular race from Bill France Sr., I think he set the right precedence for our sport right there, because he did not let the tail wag the dog right there. He said, guys, if you don't want to race, I got guys that will run this race. If y'all want to go home, that's your option, but we will run this race, and that indeed they did.
In fact, after trackside, stay with us because that will re-air. Dave Despain on assignment, Talladega.
Well, Wendy's on assignment, talking about these cars on pit road.
Wendy.
Yeah, they're sitting there for a reason, especially the 24 car, and listening to the radio communication. They are waiting for a draft out there. They're waiting for a big pack to be out on that racetrack. Also, his teammate, the 48 of Jimmy Johnson, his crew chief, Chad Knaus, asked the same thing to their spotter, Earl Barbin. Who's on pit road? Who's out on the racetrack? There wasn't enough cars out on the racetrack to make a pack right now. I say they all just get together on pit road and make one big draft out there. If that's what they're really looking for. A quick shock adjustment is what they just did on Jimmy Johnson's car. Now he's going to go get in line behind his teammate, Jeff Gordon.
Well, he better hurry, Wendy, because this little pack just left pit road, led off by Greg Biffle in the 16 car.
Yeah, the train has left the station.
Jeff Gordon, Kyle Busch, Marcus Ambrose, Michael Waltrip, David Stremme, and Tony Stewart in that pack as they head towards you. We'll take a quick break while they get up to speed. Stay with us here at Talladega. Final practice continues. Later tonight on Speed, Carl Edwards and Kevin Harvick stop by for the ultimate Friday night house party. Don't miss NASCAR trackside for Talladega tonight at 7 Eastern. NASCAR on Speed, and as we said a moment ago, stay tuned after that to watch Dave Despain on assignment here in Talladega.
And I told you earlier, little birdie told me, don't miss trackside tonight because we're going to have a surprise. And I'm not too sure if it's a Rutledge surprise, if it's, you know, Halloween surprise. They said it wasn't going to be Halloween, but I don't trust the person who told me that.
Something tells me the little birdie is a little birdie named Mark Smith, who's our producer.
No, as a matter of fact, he's not the little birdie. If that was the case, I'd have said a big birdie.
That's true. That is true.
And that would have been a stool pigeon.
Kyle Busch running right behind Jeff Gordon. We go back to Bob Dillner.
Well, guys, Kyle Busch during that first practice session was dealing with a vibration in that car, and they really could not find it. So crew chief for this week, Steve Addison, went to work on that machine. They changed a lot of stuff in the rear end, including the drive shaft. And right now, Kyle's saying, I still have a slight vibration, but it's certainly not as bad as it was in the previous practice session. So that's something they're trying to really tune in on in this practice session.
And you know, ever since we went to this restrictor plate gear rule, where we're turning a lot more RPM, not near as much as what we'll turn this week at Texas, but in the draft, these things may turn somewhere between 85 to 8,800 RPM. Is that a lot of these engines don't like that RPM. You get into what we call harmonics, where you get those vibrations, and it seems like every time we come here at Daytona with this package that we hear a lot of teams fighting. And I think Jeff's got another idea of what they try to do.
Yeah, the other thing has to do with the drivetrain itself. You try to get everything lined up and get it as straight as possible so that the drivetrain, I'm talking about the drive shaft, the transmission alignment in relationship to the rear end, you want it as straight as possible to where you make the most amount of horsepower so you don't rob it from the rear wheels is what I'm saying, Steve. But if you get it too straight, all of a sudden the universal joints don't work properly, and that's sometimes they start to vibrate. They've got to be put just enough load on them to keep the little needle bearings rotating, to keep the car, the drive shaft from vibrating. That can come from a lot of times harmonics that Larry's alluding to, and that's just us trying to make, you know, more speed. And sometimes you have to change the angle of the transmission or the pinion angle a little bit to make sure you don't have it.
I was just about to say that David Stremme must not have heard that John Darby wants to see some daylight between bumpers. When I got the word, he has been warned, and there he backs off.
And I would be willing to bet that they will only get one warning. Your second warning will be put it in the garage area, cover it up, don't practice anymore.
And we'll see tomorrow for qualifying.
And again, this is all, you know, this is over in the corner. This is where definitely in practice it's not the right thing to be doing or the right time to be doing it.
Wendy, what's going on with Jeff Gordon?
Well, we heard Jeff Gordon come over the radio right as that was happening, right after that happened, and told his spotter, hey, I need to know when the gaps start closing. That's what matters to me most. He said he's wide open on that racetrack, but the biggest thing he's concerned is when that gap's closing and they're going to come up after him, that he knows if a bump is coming and his car may get a little bit squiggly. We saw in the first practice how much these cars moved around when Dale Earnhardt Jr. got in the bumper of Jeff Gordon in practice number 1. Bob?
Well, Wendy, Clint Boyer and that team have had a hellacious day here. They have worked so hard, and they are at top of the speed charts right now. I spoke to crew chief Shane Wilson, and he said, you know what, we're still looking for speed. And I said, how can that be if you're fast? He says, it doesn't suck up the way we want it to right now. But in talking to this team, they cannot believe just this mere fact that the rear clip is as bent as it is, yet they spent that practice session, and in 1 hour, got it back to meet NASCAR specs so they can get back out on the racetrack, guys.
Bob, I think John Darby's going to issue another warning here. Michael Waltrip, and we're getting word they just did. Michael Waltrip.
You are all over there, boy. You all over it.
I'm just saying. Yep. Front bumper to rear bumper. And Michael, in fact, does let off just a bit to put some about 6 to 8 feet.
I get this feeling, Larry, that maybe John Darby has now come to the control tower since that first practice, so he can have firsthand knowledge and be able to see it with his own 2 eyes what's going on this racetrack.
And he's made it pretty simple. If you're turning the steering wheel, have daylight in front of your front bumper. If you're going straight, that's cool.
That's right. Back off. We'll be back to Talladega here on Speed. It's exciting, folks. Stay with us. Speed's coverage of NASCAR Sprint Cup final practice from Talladega is brought to you by the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Tickets now on sale for the NASCAR Hall of Fame. Just visit Ticketmaster.com. And we are 30 minutes in, halfway in this practice. And, well, Michael Waltrip has been sent to NASCAR's version of timeout.
Like permanent timeout for the rest of the day. They have parked this 55 car. We anticipated this. Remember, we had just said he had a warning. This is running behind the 48 car, Jimmy Johnson.
At 193 miles an hour in turn 3.
And the steering wheel is being turned. And what did we say before break? If you're turning the steering wheel, John Darby wants to see daylight between the front bumper and the rear bumper. That's not daylight.
Nope. That is bumper to bumper at a very high rate of speed.
I think it just overemphasizes it. NASCAR's not playing. When they ask you to do something and you don't listen, well, we'll give you a little time to think about it. He's still got 30 minutes to go in this practice, and his practice is done. I hope the crew chief had the car like he wanted it.
Well, those 2 cars hooked up together as they were. That's the second and third quickest times that's been laid down in this practice, just behind Clint Boyer. Michael ran a total of 23 laps. I would say, sticking to our theory, you've got what you've got. Nothing going to be gained in these last 30 minutes anyhow.
They may have done him a favor.
We see David Reagan out there in that 6 car, the Roush Fenway Ford. Ran a lot of laps in that first practice session. In this practice, he's 7th quickest, run a total of 22 laps. One of the 2 Fords here for Roush Fenway. Matt Kenseth at 17 being other, with the new F9 Ford engine package that they are anticipating going full time with in 2010.
Roof camera on top of David Reagan's UPS Ford. Finished 12th here back in April.
9's with you, but 1.5 back.
Now we are hearing that Michael Waltrip may not be completely parked for the entire practice, but he's been told to get off the track right now and go think about this.
Timeout.
I will say, Steve, like you said originally, timeout. But I want to go back through the that F9 engine that we're talking about so much this weekend. We got 2 cars that will be running at the 6 and the 17, but it is totally a different engine than what you've ever seen. If you had the old Ford engine and you sit it there beside the new FR9 engine, totally visible. You can see the difference between the way the water pumps, the fuel pumps. There is no fuel pump on this car. Everything there is cable driven by the basically by the oil pump. They'll pump fuel up through there. So a lot of things different on this new engine. Totally, radically different.
Well, Ford's really the last manufacturer to get a new engine package. We know the Dodge, you see Casey Kane there, the 9. They've been running the new Dodge engine for most of the year. We know that Chevrolet got the new R07 last year. Of course, the Toyota engine package is not that old. So Ford was really the last manufacturer to step in there with this new engine package.
Bob Dillner.
Down here with Michael Waltrip, and Mike, a lot of bump drafting go out there. Are you done for the practice, or have you just been given a warning and to come off the track?
I got warned to come off the track, and no, I'm not done. We're gonna put it in qualifying trim and just see what it'll do. But I think here a year ago, Jimmy and I discovered that together. We were coming to the white flag to win the race, passing the whole field running 900 miles an hour, and my motor blew up. And you know, race car drivers want to get in every position they're going to find themselves in on Sunday, and that's one of them that you're going to have to be in order to win. So our car wouldn't push like that earlier in the practice, and we made some changes, and then it got to where it would. So I just needed to see what it would do, and that's what you're going to have to do to win the race.
Is it a tough deal where, you know, that balancing act of finding out what you need to get done for the race and, you know, abiding by NASCAR's rules?
Well, obviously that's inside their rules in the race. They just wanted me to be a little more careful in practice, but I couldn't be at that moment. I needed to understand exactly what would happen, what my temperature would go to, what the car would do in that circumstance, so I know how long I could do it. Certainly, I wouldn't look too bright if I wiped out the champion in practice. So you temper what you're doing with who you're doing it with, but Jimmy and I have a lot of confidence in each other here, and I felt real good about what we were doing, and it taught us a great deal.
Don't forget, you got truck qualifying live on Speed a little while.
Ooh, you got to tune in, Bob. You talking about setting the stage for what will be one of the wildest truck races of the year. Watch this qualifying session. Phil, Rick, and I, and Ray, and Adam, and everybody will get you up to speed on what it's going to take to win this race. I love the trucks on Speed, and I especially love them in Talladega, and then we're going to put an asterisk by this one on Halloween.
Hey, Bob.
Oh, boy.
Hey,
Yes.
Bob. Tell
What's up?
Michael I'm going to leave his Estrada sunglasses up here in the booth for him.
Steve Burns wants you to know that he's going to leave your Estrada sunglasses up in the booth for you.
You just have to believe in what you endorse. Napa Auto Parts, Susan G. Coleman, Estrada.
That's it.
Estrada.
I tell you what, he's pretty incredible. Larry Mackey's kind of like you, promoting the shows you're going to be on.
There you
Good job.
go. That's what you have to do. That's what you have to do. But you know what?
Is that
He had
where you got it
risk
from?
versus reward. I think he decided to go with reward.
I learned what I needed to learn, says
bump.
Jimmy Johnson. Tomorrow on Speed, the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series hits the high banks of Talladega. And fresh off his first career win, Timothy Peters will look to make it 2 in a row. Don't miss the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series live from Talladega tomorrow at 3:30 Eastern. There you see him lined up.
Don't forget, tomorrow history will be made. The Wallace's
Mike.
first father and daughter combination racing in the Truck Series.
60 years history of NASCAR, the first time a father and a daughter has raced against each other.
I would be
in the
too
top
nervous.
series.
I'd be nervous.
And you know, looking at the practice earlier, they had one final practice. They were right there together on the practice sheet.
Ooh, you said somebody nervous?
Yeah.
I was on top of the transporter with Grandpa Richard Childress watching his grandson out there racing around with Kyle Busch and Mike Skinner and the likes of those from Camping World Truck Center and Series. Harry takes a look at that 3 truck, real tree on the side of it in number 3. And he was having himself a heck of a good time. He said, Granddad, that's a lot of fun, but he said that 51 got in the back of me, got me a little loose through the tri-oval.
And that probably won't be the first time.
See it. Richard said it scared me to death.
Let's see. Mike Skinner was fastest in Truck Series practice. Chrissy Wallace was 31st.
This man right here, Max Pappas, he's going to race in the Truck Series race.
Max was 18th overall in Truck Series practice. Let's see, Mike Wallace 29th, Chrissy Wallace 31st, Austin Dillon 21st.
You know, the Nationwide Series just raced at Memphis Motorsports Parks last weekend, and we've had a little schedule change. It involves Memphis. Memphis has been pulled off the schedule of the Nationwide Series and the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series. For the trucks, it will be replaced, and that's Easter weekend, a doubleheader with the Nationwide Series guys, and then Nationwide Series will go a second date to Gateway International in October. So a little schedule change for both those series.
Tell them about that rule change in the Camping World Truck Series, pit stops.
I do like what they've done there. It's kind of a combination. One, this is big, double file restart shootout style for the Truck Series in 2010. And they've done away with the fact that now in 2010, guess what? You can change tires and dump fuel on the pit stop. I like
the way it used to be.
Yes. Join us at the Speed Cantina at Phoenix International on Saturday, November 14th as we celebrate 80s night at the Speed Cantina. After the NASCAR Nationwide Series race, head to the Speed Cantina and hang out with your favorite speed personalities as we get down 80s style. That was in our wheelhouse, huh?
I did go last.
Did you have it on costume and outfit?
I
80s
did.
style?
I didn't. No, I just
took your shirt off.
Just went and hung out.
Did you really take your shirt off?
I did not. I did not. I just went and hung out with some of our fans.
Denny Hamlin out running by himself. That FedEx Toyota, Bob Dillner.
Denny Hamlin comes in with a lot of confidence, Steve. In fact, if you think about his 3 victories this season, he's basically predicted all 3 of them. So just before the first practice, I asked Denny, I said, hey, you going to predict a victory here? He goes, heck no, this is a wild card. There's no way you can predict anything here. And crew chief Mike Ford called him out on it. He says, you know what, Denny? He says, I remember a conversation just about 2 months ago where you said you were so good at Talladega and the restrictor plate tracks, you said you were going to win this one. And Denny kind of had a sheepish smile on his face and said, oh, maybe we'll wind up in victory again. In the last 5 races here, guys, he's led 162 laps. He's got a couple top 5s, but never a victory.
You know, Bob, 1 year ago, he led the pack a long time here, and over in turn 2, blew a right front tire, but it all went his way last week, Steve.
Led over 200 laps to win at Martinsville. Also winning on the short track at Richmond. Denny Hamlin's 3rd win of 2009, and oh, how he loves to win in his home state.
And you know, this is his 4th season on the Sprint Cup Series, and in his first year in 2006, he felt like he had 2 opportunities to win, and he won both races. But he had shared with us the frustration last year and the year before in 2007, 2008. He said he felt like he had a dozen opportunities to win a race both years and only won one. He told us on NASCAR Victory Lane last Sunday that he feels like they're back to where they were his rookie season. They have opportunities to win races, and they win races. That's the most wins he's had already this year, 3 wins in 2009.
See Joe Nemechek in the 87 car. Larry mentioned 44 drivers here, 44 teams for 43 starting positions.
Joe's a former pole winner here. Joe actually sat on the pole for this race. Actually has 4 poles here. And right now he's the 3rd quickest go or go homer. He's 26th quickest. Robert Richardson Jr. in Tommy Baldwin's 36 car making his first Sprint Cup Series start, or attempting. He's the fastest of the go or go homers. But again, you have to be so careful looking at this practice chart, because if anybody making a practice qualifying run even could see another car, that means that car is helping that car, so it can be a little deceiving sometimes.
Yeah, going back to Joe Nemechek, he leads all active drivers, like I say, with those 4 poles. Guess who's got the most poles here?
Buddy Baker.
Nope.
Bill Elliott?
Bill Elliott. Also Bill from Dawson.
He also has the track record here at 212.809 miles per hour. That's the race I was talking about. Bobby Allison, the spring of '87, when the entire field qualified over 200 miles per hour.
Kevin Harvick will join us on Trackside Live at 7 Eastern, and following that, Dave Despain on assignment in Talladega. Great show. They talk about this track opening in 1969 and overcoming a lot of adversity. It's fascinating to watch.
And he's basically making a simulated qualifying run. We've already talked about that, but this is his first lap, getting ready to basically, this will be where his white flag lap coming up now. This is what we would call the money lap as he goes to the bottom of the racetrack. See what he runs in the first lap.
52.90.
52.90 on that first lap, but now he goes to the bottom of the racetrack.
Yeah, they almost treat it like a corkscrew. Most of these guys on their first lap, they'll be at the very top of the racetrack with this carburetor restrictor plate, trying to get it wound up. The longest distance around this 2.66 mile track. Then the money lap, you want to go the shortest distance. So they'll even be a lot of them through the trial. There's no out of bounds in qualifying. That's only the race. You'll see a lot of them actually on the flat through the trial because it's the shortest distance around the racetrack.
I watched Denny Hamlin do that just a little while ago in one of his final practice runs here. Let's see if Kevin does the same thing. Get right about here in the trial, and they'll chop that corner off and get down on that apron as they get ready to come back here to the start-finish line. Let's see if Kevin does it. He doesn't do it on this lap, but he goes to a 52.23. Pretty good lap by yourself.
That is a good lap, and we know that was absolutely clean and free, that simulates a lot what you'll have tomorrow as far as no cars out there.
This practice is almost over. You know how I know?
How's that?
Michael Waltrip's in trouble, and Rick and Phil are here. Sunday, NASCAR race day takes on Talladega, where the big one could turn the championship upside down. Jeff Gordon will join them live. Wendy Venturini will chat with legendary car owner Richard Childress. NASCAR race day built by the Home Depot, live Sunday at 10 Eastern. About 10 minutes left in this practice.
Steve Burns.
That's where Jeff Hammond's costume is residing.
That's exactly right. It's hidden away so that nobody can see it. And I got a question for you. I saw a picture there of Mr. Excitement, Jimmy Spencer.
Yes, yes.
What is it like, really, to work with him and Michael on the same show? I mean, you do such a masterful job.
How about the expression herding cats?
Okay.
That's it. That's all you need to know. Let's go to Bob Dillner.
Yes, I need to get you guys out of that. Casey Kane among the fastest cars here in both sessions basically today, but it's been crazy out there at times, and NASCAR's come over and talked to you guys about that. What do you think about all that with what you're trying to accomplish out there?
Well, it's just what we have. This car, if you can get together and push each other, you know, you go faster. And that's what this racing, this Talladega track, that's kind of what you do, is you push and bump draft. And we're always trying to find ways to go faster, and that's one, is try to hook your bumpers. So it's kind of changed it up. I don't know what they'll do Sunday, but I'd imagine we'll have a big talk in the driver's meeting and kind of learn, because you know, if you say you can't, but some people are and some are not, then it's hard to know if you can or can't. I mean, it changes each race. It's kind of a difficult deal, but I think they should just let us go and just let us push and see what happens.
Bottom line is, though, Wendy, Casey Kane has one of the fastest cars here.
And the other one of those fastest cars is Denny Hamlin in that first practice. We saw you and Casey Kane, who Bob Dillner just talked to, hook up in that draft. And I know you're good when the competition, i.e. the Hendrick cars, are talking about you on the radio.
Well, it's just, you know, we've got, you know, I've got the pushing part stuff of it figured out. It's just, you know, there's a few little things that you can do to try to help, and it seems like we've kind of worked through that. Our car's just been really good at pushing, it seems like. And you know, out front, obviously, it's pretty good too. And you know, qualifying will probably be, you know, pretty decent. I don't think we'll be on a pole run by any means, but just trying to get everything I can get out of it, and you know, constantly trying to learn. That's all I'm doing by pushing guys.
How much has this track changed from the spring? I saw you just describing the racetrack to David Starr. What kind of advice are you giving to him?
Well, more with qualifying lines and stuff like that. You know, it's tough to say what's exactly the best way to do it, but you know, it's all splitting hairs. It seems like no matter what you do, it's all about the same. But you know, there's just a few little things that you can do to try to help. Obviously, a Toyota teammate.
All right, good luck to Denny Hamlin this weekend. He is all smiles in the Cup garage, guys.
You know, I felt like that team, and I know a lot of people did, they needed that win last week at Martinsville for a lot of reasons. One, just to win another race, see Michael Waltrip back out on the racetrack. In fact, he's second quickest right now. But I think the biggest reason that team needed that win and that shot in arm was you look back at the 2 weeks prior to Martinsville. Had the car to beat, had sat on the pole at Auto Club Speedway in Fontana. Denny made a mistake on a restart, got crashed, took the car out. 1 week later, Lowe's Motor Speedway looked again like he had the car to beat. Maybe the one car that could beat the 48 car had engine failure. So that team needed that shot in arm. The amazing thing, 147 starts for Denny Hamlin, that 11 team in Sprint Cup. 8 DNFs, and 2 of them were back-to-back weeks at Auto Club Speedway and Lowe's Motor Speedway.
Michael Waltrip heads to the garage. We head to break. Jack Roush, company look on here at the Talladega Superspeedway. Closing moments of final practice. Final practice just about in the books here at the Talladega Superspeedway. They qualify tomorrow. We'll have that for you here on Speed.
You know, just as we went to break, we were talking about Michael Waltrip making a practice qualifying run. It looks like David Reagan, the 6 car, is doing the same thing. We said he's second quickest. Just remember, second quickest for him was in that draft when he was tied up at that 48 car. His fast lap in the draft was a 49.84. On that practice qualifying run, he ran a 52.37. So again, you can see 2 to 3 seconds or more difference from being in a big pack in a draft to qualifying. Daytona and Talladega are one of the only two tracks where you're slower in qualifying trim than you are in race trim.
And Larry, let's make sure we kind of quantify that, because some people are going to wonder, okay, 2 or 3 seconds. What does that equate to in miles per hour? 10 miles an hour difference between in the draft versus the qualifying run. So quite a bit of speed and getting hooked up with the right people at the right place at the right time. You can definitely run quicker around Talladega like that.
Yeah, he was 192 in the draft and 182 on that practice qualifying run.
Watching David Reagan, he's down below the yellow line, coming back to the start-finish line. We've seen several drivers do that during their qualifying attempts.
Tony Raines in the 37 car.
Now, I think we'll be able to put a better period on this tomorrow when we actually see qualifying. But we just talked about Michael Waltrip at 182.8 miles per hour. If you go back to the spring race when Montoya sat on the pole, he ran 188.171. Remember, the one change we've had is that 64th of a carburetor restrictor plate change, which we know for a fact is about 12 to 14 horsepower less with the smaller plate this race.
Reed Sorensen in the 43 car, 4th overall right now in his Dodge.
So what we're seeing, the last practice, the very first practice, and then a little bit of the beginning of this practice, the top 35 especially worked on race drafting runs. And now we're starting to see our go-homers as well as our top 35 just see how fast they can run for a qualifying run.
Steve and Larry, we've been up here, like I say, all afternoon watching these practice sessions, both of them. To me, it's almost like watching when they dropped that green flag and opened the track earlier on the day. Everybody couldn't wait to get out there and had to try and remember how to basically plate race. Had to see what this plate had to offer. And we saw a lot of scary things going on during that first practice. 3 wide, 4 wide, guys bumping and knocking each other around. But it's like all of a sudden, the realization is, okay, now I remember how I need to do this. It's almost like getting reacclimated. We talk about that a lot of times when we go to road courses. So why wouldn't you feel the same way when you come to a restrictor plate race? We haven't been on a restrictor plate racing since Daytona back in July. So it's been a long time since they've had to do this. And again, with some of the subtle changes, I think a lot of these drivers are a little bit antsy and a little bit too aggressive at the beginning of practice. This here was a much more calmer, much more controlled practice session, and we have not seen any incidents really come close in the second practice like we saw in the first.
Well, and I think John Darby and NASCAR played a huge role in that with the warnings that they issued throughout this practice.
Yeah,
this is what we were talking about.
Crew
This was just after the track opened for the very first practice. You see a pack of about 25 cars. They started checking up in front of this group here, and Eric Darnell gets in the back of Clint Boyer, goes down across the apron. The big damage was done when Eric hit him in the back and actually mashed the quarter panels down and mashed the tail section down a little bit. So it was just after the track opened for that first
Looked
practice.
like somebody dropped the green flag on Sunday.
Actually, it looked like the checkered flag lap.
You got a good point there. Like I say, 7 minutes into a practice session, it looked like it was every man for himself and get out of my way, I'm coming through.
Now, Reed Sorensen, his fast lap is a 50.13, and that was in the draft a while ago. He's 4th quickest. His first lap was 53.25, and he just ran a 53.23. And that seems to be the nature of a lot of the Dodges here, especially the Richard Petty Motorsports Dodge. And there you see the end of practice, is they don't run that fast qualifying run, but those cars seem like they draft good, they race good, just like we saw Casey Kane, the 9 car, most of these 2 practice sessions.
So that is the final practice laps of this AMP Energy 500 weekend. They qualify tomorrow. We'll have that for you here on Speed.
I've been saying it all along, folks. When you look at these practice speeds, all there are a representation of a drafting speed, not what these guys are going to qualify at tomorrow. They're going to be a lot slower, but they'll still be just as close. You never know who's going to wind up sitting on the podium.
We will step aside for a few minutes. When we come back, Phil Parsons, Rick Allen, Michael Waltrip, Adam Alexander, and Ray Dunlap will have Camping World Truck Series qualifying for you here at Talladega.